Hello, Facebook. This is our second Buddhism 101 live stream. We are doing this because of obviously the viral outbreak right now. And so one of the things that we wanted to do is stay connected. We wanted to keep reminding people the importance of practice. And so today we're having our usual online service. And the online service is going to be a little different from our regular service in that we will be modifying it because of the lack of in-person or face-to-face interaction. I'm going to talk a little bit about the instructions or the agenda for today, but to give people some time to log in and to get settled in, I wanted to first talk a little bit about today's topic. We're going to be discussing anxiety. And first of all, I want to say anxiety and fear are different things. They're experienced in different areas of the brain. Anxiety has some benefits as well as drawbacks. And in a time like this where we're dealing with a viral outbreak, anxiety to a certain level can activate us, can make us energize us, motivate us to plan and to prepare. But when the anxiety gets to be too much, when we have all this anxious energy and nothing to do with it, or we don't do anything with this anxious energy, then we can start becoming self-destructive. And so I want to focus today on anxiety. I want to focus today on how Buddhism addresses anxiety and what are things that we can do. As always, I will be drawing from not only Buddhist psychology, but modern psychology. You know that I like to mix the two. And we'll be able to then, hopefully, some of what I say today will give you some insight and some words of wisdom that you can think about and ponder during your self-quarantines or quarantines or shelter at home that we're experiencing here in San Antonio. Let's go ahead and start by giving instructions for what we'll be doing here today. First, we will do a short meditation. Meditation will be for about 10 minutes. This will help us start putting our mind in the right frame of mind, in the correct mindset. Calm things down, slow things down, be more present, be more now focused. After those 10 minutes of meditation, then we will do a short Dharma talk. As I mentioned, I will be talking about anxiety today and how to deal with it. After the Dharma talk, we will then do another short 10-minute meditation. The difference is that the purpose of this second meditation is more for insight, for you to have and take some time to mindfully focus on whatever thoughts or emotions were triggered by the Dharma talk and sit with them, explore them, be curious about them, question them, in hopes that you will then gain some insight and some wisdom that will help you throughout the following days. Throughout the live stream, feel free to make comments. Feel free to do the likes or the hearts, whatever you want to do. Let's have a little bit of fun with this. And after the session is over, this will be posted online and you'll be able to continue making comments and asking questions. And so if questions pop up either today or later on in the week, feel free to make those comments and make those questions, ask those questions on the on the comment section of the videos, and we'll be able to continue our discussion and maybe even help each other out. And so the comment section will be a great place for us to give insights to each other as well. It's a poor substitution for the interaction we have at the temple, but it is better than not having any social interaction. Good. So for the first thing we do, let's do a short meditation. Get ourselves in the right frame of mind. How to meditate. What you want to do is, the primary task when you are meditating is to focus on the breath. We do this many different ways. The three that we often recommend are: focus on the sensation of breathing. So as you breathe in, feel the cool air entering, hitting the back of your throat and entering your lungs. And as you exhale, feel the warm air, feel the lungs contracting, feel the shoulders maybe going down, or your stomach or abdomen, your diaphragm. Just pay attention to how it feels to breathe. The other technique we often teach is to simply count your breaths. Count them up to 10, and once you get to 10, start over at 1. And the other technique, the third technique we often recommend that you can try out, is to use a mantra or a gatha. So a word or a phrase that means something to you that you then repeat over and over again and synchronize with your breath. Ultimately, what you are trying to do is develop the skill of staying focused on the here and now. And so when you focus on the activity you are engaging in right now, then it will help you be more present-oriented. And it makes it more difficult to be stuck either in the past or in the future. Ultimately, what you want to do is become more and more present-oriented. And that will lead to a healthier mind, a healthier heart, and a healthier spirit. Even master meditators will have distractions, moments where they lose focus. When you do that, or when that happens in your meditation, the practice of meditation is being able to refocus on the breath. And so the act of refocusing is practice. And so it's a good thing and shouldn't be met with judgment. I think that's it for instructions. If anyone has any questions, now's the time to ask questions about the meditation practice. Otherwise, we will start the meditation. A quick note on walking meditation. You can do walking meditation in a closet. And so the idea of walking meditation is to focus on the steps and help you be present-oriented that way. For individuals who are more anxious, who maybe have a lot of anxious energy, or if they're angry and they have a lot of angry energy, sometimes walking meditation is easier to do than sitting meditation, because at least you're active, you're doing something. And so it's a good starting point if you're too agitated. Start with walking meditation, and when you're calm enough, then you can do sitting meditation. For today, we're going to start with sitting meditation. We'll do the Dharma talk and then do another sitting meditation. So get comfortable. Get in a position that you can stay in for 10 minutes. Try not to move, but if you have to, do so. Slow things down. Settle in. And let us begin. needed that. I don't know about you, but I needed that. Anxiety. Last week I mentioned fear. Fear triggers fight, flight, or freeze. But not anxiety. Anxiety can lead to some fear, but anxiety is more about worry. Anxiety is more about a lot of rumination. These thoughts just constantly going through your head. And like I stated earlier, anxiety is an important emotion. And so if you think it's a negative thing, I would ask that you think of it more as a negative in its extremes. And I think we can say that about a lot of things, that too much of something is not a good thing. And so anxiety in high quantities cannot be healthy, or can be unhealthy. But a little bit of anxiety is actually a healthy thing. It's a healthy emotion, a healthy reaction. It's interesting, I remember looking up Buddhist teachers react shortly after the 9/11 attack. And at least the ones that I found, the videos that I was able to find on YouTube, they expressed worry. They expressed anxiety. They expressed that they experienced that emotion, that it arose in them. So here were these master meditators, these great Dharma teachers, who, when this unexpected event occurred, they had a reaction. And their answers quite consistently was that the solution was compassion. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about compassion, but in terms of focus more on compassion for self. But a lot of these techniques, thoughts, ideas that I'll be discussing are things that you can also help others with. Now, before I go into anxiety, or talking about anxiety, I want to talk about one of the bigger obstacles, one of the bigger trips when we're trying to deal with any intense emotion. And Mark made a comment that made a comment there about his about his BP, is beats per minute, or BPM. I don't know if you said BPM, but your heart rate. And I want to talk about it. I'm glad that Mark brought that up, because that is a very crucial thing to be aware of. When your heart rate reaches a certain level, your thinking brain starts to shut down. Your ability to reason starts to shut down. This is one of the reasons why in couples therapy, some of the therapists will put little heartbeat monitors. They're just finger size, they're little clamps. You may have seen them when you go to the doctor's visits. They clamp on their finger and they measure beats per minute. And when the heart rate reaches a certain level in therapy, with couples therapy, the discussion stops, or the therapist will stop the discussion, because it means that you've crossed into a zone where you're going to be unable to have a rational conversation. So at that point, the therapist will engage in some calming techniques, things that they have practiced before they really dove into therapy, and then just help the heart rate calm down, slow down, so that the thinking mind can take over again. Whenever you look up Buddhist techniques for dealing with anxiety, psychological techniques for dealing with anxiety. The first step has consistently been slow down. Slow the mind down. Slow the heart down. Slow your body down. So the first step when dealing with the anxiety, when you feel like it's just getting to be too much, is to simply slow down. I mentioned earlier that one thing you could try is, if you have a lot of energy, do walking meditation first. Use up some of the energy and to sort of try and bring your mind to the present moment and to slow things down. You can slow your speech, talk more slowly, and that will help slow things down. You can move more slowly, more smoothly. As you're walking, you could just slow down your steps. As you're brushing your teeth, brush them more slowly. Be more mindful of your actions. So you don't have to necessarily stop what you're doing, but if you can be more mindful of what you're doing at the moment and maybe slow things down a little bit, that will have a calming, slowing effect. So the first step is always to try to slow things down. If you practice meditation on a regular basis, then that becomes a lot easier to do. And that's why it's so important to have a regular practice and maintain a regular practice. If you practice enough, for many of us, all we need to do is take one good, deep breath. And it's amazing how calming and refreshing that one breath becomes. So practicing mindfulness and practicing meditation on a regular basis gives you a tool to slow things down. So that's the first step. You need to slow things down. A second step is a sort of acceptance, embracing of the anxiety. And let me back up a bit and talk about a bit of a story. If you look at Buddhist mythology, there is a figure called Mara. And Mara is the closest thing to the devil that you will find in Buddhist mythology. And whenever Mara interacts with Buddha, the first action of the Buddha is to greet Mara. Hello, Mara, or acknowledge that Mara is there. Not with anger, not with disdain, not with judgment. Just acknowledge and accept that Mara is there. And even in the story of the temptations, when Mara sent his daughters to tempt the Buddha didn't shun them away. He welcomed them and accepted them, told them that there would be certain conditions to them being with him, if you've read the story. But it's never been a harsh rebuttal, never been a harsh aversion to those temptations or to Mara. What that tells us is that whenever we encounter a negative emotion, anger, anxiety, fear, welcome it, or at least acknowledge it, respect it. Don't push it away. Don't be averse to it. Just sort of accept, I am anxious. I am angry. And so part of the acceptance is labeling the emotion. And it's amazing. We've done a lot of research on a technique that Buddhism has been talking about for over 2,500 years. the labeling of emotions. Just labeling it has a tremendous effect in our psychological health. So that's part of the welcoming. When you are able to welcome or accept that you are experiencing these emotions, then you can move on to the third step. And that's when you engage it in a curious way. You question it. You study it. You observe it. Sit with it. Listen to what it's saying. But what's interesting is you want to keep a sort of psychological social distancing. You want to be observing the anxiety as if you were watching a movie on the screen. So you're not engaging it, you're not pushing it away, you're just neutrally, non-judgmentally watching and curious about it, and ask questions about it. Ask the why, what, where, when, hows. Or just stick with why, as Master Thich Quang Tri teaches us. Just use the why method. And just explore it. Sometimes that will give us greater insight. If you engage it or push it away too much, it may start feeling like it's going to be overwhelming. So in that case, then yes, you want to slow things down again. You want to create some distance. You don't want to allow yourself to get overwhelmed. But then once you've explored it and talked about, or talked with it, which is a technique as well, what you find is a lot of times our anxiety boils down to worries that we won't be able to cope, that we won't be able to deal with, that we won't be able to manage whatever situation we're worried about. And sometimes we worry about nothing at all. We're just worried. But underlying that worry is this feeling that we cannot cope, or we won't be able to survive, or we won't be able to handle it. So a really effective thing you can do is to think back at the times you've handled surprise situations and reflect on the fact that you survived. Reflect on the fact that sometimes you even thrived and were a better person afterwards, that you were able to manage. Reflect on the fact that you may not have done it on your own, but you have reached out and had some help. And so reminding yourself of some of those successes gives you a little bit of confidence that, yes, you may not be able to predict the future, but you've handled that situation before. This is not the first time you've been in a situation where you didn't know what was going to happen next. And yet here you are. So you've succeeded in some way. You've made it. And you'll make it again. I would throw in there one other thing, another Buddhist term. Buddha taught us about impermanence, that nothing lasts forever. And while some people tend to focus on the negative aspect of impermanence or the unhappiness of impermanence, there is a lot of hope to impermanence. This viral outbreak won't last forever. This anxiety won't last forever. These fears won't last forever. Impermanence also teaches us to appreciate and be grateful. I know that when I step out of my door, one thing that I found myself starting to remind myself is this might be the last time I see my family. And you think, well, that's a morbid thought. But what that does is it makes me really relish and take in that kiss goodbye. It really makes me present to that hug as I say goodbye. So impermanence grounds me in the here and now. Impermanence helps me appreciate and be more grateful for what I have right now, because it won't last forever. And when the good times pass and we're in bad times, impermanence gives me hope. One day I will be able to go back to HEB and not be worried about catching something. One day I'll be able to go into work again, be with friends, be annoyed by that coworker. Impermanence gives us hope, and impermanence helps us be grateful for what we have. I think I'll leave it there. I hope that some of the words or phrases or used today or ideas expressed triggered something in you, gave you something to think about. I want you to take a moment and we'll do another 10-minute meditation here. And while our first meditation was focused on calming things down and slowing things down, this second meditation, I want you to focus on insight. Sitting with your anxiety, sitting with the thought that caught your attention during this talk. And how are you going to use this to help others? Anxiety makes us focus sometimes too much on ourselves. And so, take the time also to think about how are you going to help others with this insight that you had. So get in a comfortable position, one that you can stay in for a while. Settle in. Sit with your emotions and your thoughts. Observe them. Welcome them. Learn from them. And use these 10 minutes to make yourself a better person. to thank you all for joining me today. It feels good to know that we're still connected. I want to thank Mark and Maida and Min and Jerry for their comments. I want to say a special hello to George. Glad you could join us. I'm glad all of you were here today. I hope and pray that the insights you had during meditation will bring you some comfort, will make things clear. We're going to get through this. It's going to suck, but we're going to get through this. And I know that many of you, if not all of you, are going to play a very important role in being that stable beacon of peace. Keep practicing. Keep reaching for better. Keep cultivating that stillness and that peace. And eventually you get to the point where just your mere presence will be enough for some. Feel free to keep making comments. This video will be posted on our page. And so if you ever want to come back to it, feel free to do so and fast forward to the parts you want to hear. Next week, I'm thinking what I might do is talk a little bit more about impermanence and the Buddhist impermanence and how that applies to our spiritual path. And some of the very deep implications to that, that very important principle in Buddhism. Until then, stay safe and stay healthy. And I look forward to meeting with you all again next week. Take care, everyone.